What's up everybody, Renfail here, back for another Baldur's Gate 3 video, and today we're talking about my first impressions of the game after 1 week of it being live. Now obviously I've played this game throughout early access since it went out, not as heavy as some. I definitely got pretty heavy into it the last couple of months of early access, but I have played it since it first launched. You can find those videos on my channel way back in the playlist for Baldur's Gate 3. So I've put in my time. I've got several hundred hours in. I know some people have thousands. It's crazy the amount of content that we got out of early access. But obviously there was a difference between the early access version of the game and the live version of the game, which is what we've all been playing for the last week. Now I have a lot of thoughts. I've talked about them in some of the videos I've put out. But I've also been saving some stuff for this video, which is my first impressions video after 1 week of playing the game live. We've been streaming every single day, at least once a day, from 11 a.m. to around 2 p.m. Central Time. So we're getting at least, I would argue I'm getting about 6 hours a day of gameplay in, because I'm playing an online stream, and then I'm either doing a second stream or I'm doing an offline playthrough with my sorcerer character, on top of which I'm creating all the guides and everything else around this game. So I think I'm doing probably, conservatively, I would say probably about 10 hours a day, 8 to 10 hours a day of just Baldur's Gate 3. That's consumed my life as a content creator for the past 2 months, and rightfully so, because there's a lot going on here. And yeah, we've got Starfield coming up and Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty and other stuff that I'm going to be playing as those games come out. But this Baldur's Gate 3 is kind of the game that has finally weaned me off of MMORPGs completely. I was kind of already moving away from MMOs in 2023 for the first time in, since like 1996 or something. MMOs have been my primary form of entertainment, even though there have been things like Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, KOTOR, Neverwinter Nights, Icewind Dale, Jade Empire, Mass Effect. I could go on. There's been a ton of great single-player RPGs that have come out over the years, but MMOs have always been like where I put most of my energy. My channel was originally built up off of like Lord of the Rings Online, Star Wars: The Republic, and old school retro games like King's Quest, Space Quest, Quest for Glory, Trail at Krondor, that kind of stuff. And then along came Baldur's Gate 3, and the early access was fun. It was, but you notice I did play that much of early access because it wasn't a launched game. The game's out now. It's really freaking good. We're going to get into some stuff here in the game here in a few minutes. I realize I'm still rambling 3 minutes in, but that's what you get with me. This is a 10 out of 10 for me, and I think that it's kind of hard for games to get a 10 out of 10 from me in particular. I am easily entertained. That those of you who've been around for a while know this. It doesn't take a lot to make me happy. But even games like Jedi Survivor, God of War, Ragnarok, things like that only have gotten like maybe an 8 to an 8.5. It's pretty rare for things to go beyond like an 8.5 with me. And one of the reasons is because there's always little things. There's things like, a good example would be like Jedi Survivor and Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Both great games, but both have an element of repetitive side quests where you're doing things for those accomplishments that don't have anything to do with the main storyline. And those are the things that when I start to play that aspect of the game with Jedi Survivor, like the running around and all the puzzles and jumping around and everything else, or doing the repeatable stuff in Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Odyssey or Origins. Those are the things that will start to take away from a game. For me personally, I don't really enjoy those, but those games are still great games. The last game I can remember off the top of my head, and somebody who's watched my reviews may correct me on this, but the last one I can remember giving a 10 out of 10 to would be like Red Dead Redemption 2. That was a 10 out of 10 game for me. And otherwise, over the years, there have been a lot of 8.5s, 8s, maybe a 9 here and there, but not a 10 until Baldur's Gate 3. The game's been out for a week. I've been playing it a lot every single day, as I mentioned, and it's definitely... I haven't finished the game yet, so I don't want to get ahead of myself and give like a final review here, but I could easily see this being the generational game that Baldur's Gate 2 was. It seems to be that after just a week of playing. I've not had a game consume me like this in a long, long time. Even just as a gamer, um, this game has me satisfied. Even if it wasn't for the content creation component and making a living on YouTube, I would still be playing the hell out of this game because it's a really, really, really good game. Um, I think Larian has done a lot of interesting things here. It's obviously a lot different than the first two games. Let's am I do I have a game loaded up here real quick? Let me tab over. I do not, but we're gonna load up one of my sessions here, and while it's loading, we could talk a little bit more. Let's go to the druid character. We'll get that loading in the background. Um, it's Forgotten Realms, so it's familiar for those of us who are Forgotten Realms. No, I wouldn't. I'm not necessarily a fanatic for Forgotten Realms. I much prefer Dragonlance, but I do have a passing knowledge of Forgotten Realms. I've read some of the novels over the years. I've played pretty much. I think I've played every single D&D game that has ever come out, even if they're not always that great. Um, I've still played them all. Same thing with like Star Wars games. I will always play Star Wars games when they come out, and some of them are better than others, and that's the case here with Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Some games have been better than others over the years, but I'll always play it. And in terms of the Forgotten Realms being the setting, we know Baldur's Gate. We know the Sword Coast. We know characters like Elminster and Drizzt. These are familiar faces. Volo, as an example, it was quite a pleasure to see Volo showing up in the game when I first saw him in early access, and then I know just recently I did a "Who is Volo?" scripted video. So to see things like that in this game is great for those of us who love Forgotten Realms stuff because we get to have our hands on that. Let me tab over into the game here. And let me get my controller set up and the window moved over so that I can see all my things. Here we go. So I think one of the things that has sold me on this being like the best game I've played in years and years and years. First and foremost, it's a rich game with tons of things in it like from the Forgotten Realms that we know, which I just mentioned. But also, it's a throwback to the things from the first game. It's big. It's got so many quests. It's got so many conversations. And one of the things from the first game was that the Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, I guess I should say, was that those games featured a ton of companion storylines. The second game in particular had way more than the first game. And this game is no different. Like, I mean, we've already done. I mean, these are all the quests that I have or have done, working on, etc. So going down here, like even just now, my companion quests. I just have right now really only two characters, and yet we have all of these. We can read through here. These are the two ones that I'm really working on: Dart of Darkness, Blade of Frontiers. But we also have the Githyanki Warrior quest. We have the Pale Elf quest. We have the Wizard of Waterdeep quest. Um, and on top of the quests with the companions and the rich amount of dialogue that's between them, also the romance options that we have. I've already seen some amazing cutscenes through early access and now into live of the romance options. And on top of that, you have the banter between the party members, which is absolutely brilliant as we run around and adventure. And that's something that I know some people will say things like, "Oh, I really want to play the game with like a crew of custom characters like it's Icewind Dale, and I don't care about all the companion dialogue." And I would argue that that's not the way Baldur's Gate was ever designed to be played. Now, obviously, Larian has gone out of their way, and this is one of the reasons why I think this game is going to capture the hearts of everyone. Larian has gone out of their way to make sure that everyone can play this game the way they want. First and foremost, playing it on a controller, which I've been talking about a lot recently. Um, Everything here is I play like 90%, 85, 90% is on the controller these days as opposed to on the mouse and keyboard. It's just so good. How many PC games come out that have really good controller support? Not a lot. This one does, and that's one of the reasons why it's catapulted it up leaps and bounds beyond so many other PC games I play because I get to use a controller with it and it works so good and I can seamlessly switch. Now we're back into mouse and keyboard mode, right? Like it's a seamless transition where we can switch over and boom, now we've got our mouse and keyboard options and everything else. Like it's just so amazing the way it plays like this. But above and beyond that, I would say that when you're looking at a game that gives you so many options, Dungeons and Dragons is sometimes a little bit restrictive in the sense that it has rules, right? It has rules like you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, and there's a certain progression to things. It doesn't matter what edition of Dungeons and Dragons we're talking about. This being fifth edition, there are still rules that you have to apply to. And one of the things that Larian has done is allowed people to respec their characters. So we can go back to camp as an example, and we can go talk to this dude. And not only can... Oh, I think we actually have to go back to the hard camp. Is he here at this one? He might be down here. He is down here. I wasn't sure where he was at and when because I'm underground here. But this guy right here, Withers. So you can come down here.
Spins along as it should.
We'll get him through his dialogue.
Dost thou require a new ally? Or mayhaps a resurrection?
Haha. What's up, everybody? Quick commercial break here to give it a shout out to our guild champions, who are the highest tier memberships here on YouTube. Ancient Entity, Assassin Gamer 94, Bubbleonia Rising, Crazy's Relative, Mujin, and Remedy. Thanks so much for the highest tier membership. And thanks to all of the members who support the channel, because you keep me doing this full time. You too can become a supporter if you're new here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. Join as a member. There's 3 different tiers. We do lots of special stuff, private polls, private videos. You get a shout out if you're the highest tier membership, but you can also do one-off donations in the form of super chats on any live stream or premiere you see, and of course super thanks on any upload or YouTube short. Whatever you can contribute, it's great. Keeps me on the air full time, keeps the cats fed, keeps the homestead running. Anyway, back to the video, everybody. So this is where Larian has gone out of their way to not only give a game that does fan service to those of us who love Dungeons and Dragons, and playing a game that I think for the first time in a very long time really feels like a tabletop game set in a digital space. Not only have they done that, but they've also allowed you to say, "Oh, well, what if you do want to play it like Icewind Dale, even though that's not necessarily the way that the original Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 games were meant to be played? But what if you want to do that way? Well, we will give you that option because you can come in here and you can hire hirelings that can be completely customized, and you can make the party that you want. Or you can respec yourself and change your what? You can't change your class in Dungeons and Dragons. Like that's unheard of, but that's the thing. They have modified the rule set here to make a game that is enjoyable by many people, not just fans of Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot of people out there that don't know the rules for D&D. They may not have ever played a game like this before. And what they don't want you to do is to get 40 hours into the game, 60 hours into the game, whatever, and find out that you don't like this particular class because you're not familiar with the classes, and you want to change over, but you don't want to lose all that story progression. Well, guess what? We'll let you do that. That's interesting for a Dungeons and Dragons game to have a respec option like that, because traditionally with Dungeons and Dragons, you play a class, you stick with that class, you level it up until it's done, and then you move on to the next playthrough. And I think that that's always been the appeal of it to me, is that replayability, but not everyone wants to replay it like I do, and not everyone's a content creator that needs to replay it for content purposes. Maybe people are only going to get through it one time. So having the ability to change your class when you're 10 or 20 hours in, and not lose your story progression is a pretty big deal, because this is a game where it's got around 80 hours of base storyline and then like 200 hours if you're going to go completionist nerd like I am, per playthrough. Not just overall, but per playthrough. So all of these things combine together to make a game that is truly, I think, in my mind, above and beyond what the first 2 games offered, which was just pretty much a cut and dry Dungeons and Dragons experience, which was amazing. Baldur's Gate 2 to this day remains pretty much the standard by which I look at all other CRPGs. I'm like, if you want to be a good CRPG, you need to provide me personally, and I'm not everybody, but I want to feel like if you're going to make a CRPG that is worthy of my time, it needs to aspire to be what Baldur's Gate 2 was. Not all CRPGs have done that, but I would argue that things like Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire, that game absolutely reached that level for me. The Pathfinder games are in the list, but a couple things I didn't like about those games was the kingdom management and the army management of both of those games. But you could turn that off, and it's great to turn it off because then those games become a much more, for me, a much more enjoyable CRPG. But it's really hard to get up to that bar of Baldur's Gate 2. Like I said, Deadfire is one of the only ones that really sticks out over the years as that and Dragon Age Origins, I would argue. That's another one that are up there with like Baldur's Gate 2. And then along came Baldur's Gate 3. And I know a lot of people were worried about whether or not Larian Studios could pull it off. And I would like to think that not only have they pulled it off, I think they have hit it out of the ballpark. I think that it is a home run for them. Because again, I don't do 10 out of 10 very often. It's pretty rare for me to give a game a 10 out of 10. And this isn't my official review, by the way. This is just my first impressions after a week of playing, and it has been a flawless experience in terms of my enjoyment. Now, that being said, I recognize that there still are a few quirks here and there with some of the controls, the inventory management. These are things that will get and have already received. If you've been watching the hot fixes, they have been listening to feedback and they have been hot fixing in little quality of life features and little things that other people have seen and have been like, wait, maybe you could smooth this out if you did this, and they're like, oh yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Let's take that a little step further, and as long as it aligns with their vision for what the game is supposed to be, they're happy to refine those little things and make the game even smoother and better. So I gotta say, Larian Studios, um, you had my attention. Now you've got me hooked. I played Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2. Those were great games, but they didn't make it on the list like Deadfire and Dragon Age Origins did. This game, however, Larian, you are now firmly up there in like my top 5 CRPGs of all time, and you have definitely hit the mark as far as I'm concerned in terms of making a game that reaches to the same heights as Baldur's Gate 2, and I haven't even finished the game yet. I'm still in Act 1, guys. Like I've been playing my druid, I've been playing my sorcerer, I've got the multiplayer sessions that I'm doing with Babylonia and Mujin. Links to everybody's stuff is down below. Um, and it's an amazing game. So that's my first impressions after 1 week. If you like my video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. I stream daily at 11 a.m. as much as I can. It's pretty much every day. Sometimes the internet goes out. You never know because I live in the boonies. Join the Discord. Links are down below. Memberships, Super Chats, Super Thanks, all great ways to support. I'll see everybody in the next video or live stream. Until then, stay safe and happy gaming.